Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I am so glad you're joining us today because uh, we are tackling one of the most consequential shifts, really, in the last generation, the fundamental reshaping of the classroom. We're going deep into the evolving landscape of digital education, and we're pulling from a whole stack of sources that, well, they challenge us to look beyond just our opinions.
It's a massive topic, you're right. And the sources we're looking at, they demand a very specific kind of analysis from us. I mean, our mission today is laser focused.
Right.
We aren't just summarizing what online classes are. We are rigorously unpacking the core effects. We want to know with, concrete evidence, what actions in this digital space directly help students succeed.
And conversely, what harms them?
And what directly harms their outcomes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're moving past, online is convenient, and we're asking, why is it convenient? And what are the, the downstream effects of that convenience? We're hunting for those clear cause and effect relationships. And that structural view it's just essential. To really grasp the scope of this change, we have to recognize that the move to digital didn't just digitize old methods. It fundamentally altered the entire educational ecosystem.
Okay.
So we're really addressing the central question posed by the material, how education has been transformed and how those specific changes either bolster or, undermine student performance.
All right, so let's unpack that transformation first. Before we even get to the good and the bad, we have to understand the ground we're standing on. The sources overwhelmingly point to these foundational shifts in, I think it was 3 areas: delivery, accessibility, and expectation.
That's it.
So what do we mean by that environmental change?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the educational environment was basically forced to decouple itself from physical space and time. I mean, traditional learning was synchronous.
Everyone in the same room.
Everyone together, same time, same room. The digital shift allowed for asynchronous learning, where that physical structure of the learning experience just disappears. You can think about massive open online courses, MOOCs, from about a decade ago.
Oh, yeah, I remember those.
They signaled a new norm,
Yeah.
right? Content was suddenly unbundled from the institution's physical location.
And that initial act of unbundling, just removing the necessity of the 9 a.m. bell ringing,
Yeah,
that had to have created a domino effect.
it did.
It immediately changed expectations.
Yeah.
Students moved from being sort of passive receivers of information on a schedule to active managers of their own learning.
Precisely. And we saw institutions responding to demographic shifts and, frankly, to budget pressures. I mean, for a lot of state universities facing declining state funding, launching robust online programs wasn't just some outreach tool.
It was survival.
It was an economic lifeline. This shift provided the means for certain universities, particularly in the Midwest and South, to effectively extend their reach into neighboring states, markets that previously required those expensive out-of-state fees.
So they could capture a broader market.
Dramatically expanded their enrollment potential. It secured the long-term viability of entire programs.
So the need for economic survival and the technical ability to do asynchronous content, they just sort of converged.
Yep.
And created a situation where access suddenly becomes location agnostic.
Yeah.
That really is the core transformation, isn't it?
It is, and that pivot leads us directly to the help side of the equation, the overwhelmingly positive consequences that pop up when you remove those old geographical and time barriers.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because when people talk about the benefits, they almost always start with flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
But wait a minute. Isn't flexibility just another word for putting the entire burden of time management onto the student? How can the sources call that a universally positive thing?
That's a fair challenge. It really is. And the answer lies in who benefits the most. For the non-traditional student, the working professional, the single parent, the person trying to get a vocational certificate without quitting their job, that kind of flexible scheduling is transformative.
Okay.
The sources show that the self-paced nature of, say, a well-designed online professional course, it dramatically reduced the time to certification for certain high-demand vocational skills.
Give me a specific nugget on that. Like, how much time are we actually talking about?
We are talking, the data indicates that in synchronous, classroom-based programs, the schedule is the bottleneck. But in self-paced environments, really motivated learners could shave off somewhere between 30 and 45% of the total program duration.
Wow. So almost half the time. for some people.
Almost half. This accelerated path means faster workforce integration, higher earnings, specifically for people who already have that high self-discipline. So for that group, the flexible schedule is a direct cause of economic upward mobility.
That is a concrete and really powerful benefit. So removing that rigid structure empowers the motivated student to customize their own learning pathway. They can maximize retention, minimize burnout.
Because they're learning when they're most alert.
Right, not just when the lecture happens to be scheduled.
Exactly. And the other critical help factor is access for marginalized populations. I mean, think about students with mobility issues or chronic illnesses, or those who live in really remote, geographically isolated regions. For them, geographic independence is the primary cause of any educational opportunity.
It's not just a convenience, it's the only way.
It's essential. Without the digital classroom, their access to a specialized major or a top-tier professor, it just wouldn't exist, period.
And what about just the capacity for individualized content retrieval?
Yeah.
That feels like a huge win. If I miss a point in a physical lecture, it's gone.
Right.
If I'm in an online class, I can rewind. I can rewatch complex sections over and over until I actually get it.
That ability to pause and review is especially powerful for students who might be language learners or, anyone grappling with really dense, complex material. This self-regulated review capability is a causal factor in increasing comprehension rates. It effectively democratizes the pace of understanding.
So on the help side, the big theme is really the customization of the educational experience.
Yeah.
Customizing time, location, and the speed of information intake.
That's the clear takeaway from the sources. However, and you sort of alluded to this earlier, the very same mechanisms that create this freedom, they also introduce immense structural vulnerabilities for other types of students.
Right.
So now we have to turn to the harm side, and we have to maintain that objective tone and just focus on the potential negative outcomes that arise when we increase that reliance on the student.
The primary cause of potential harm, then, seems to be that increased reliance on self-discipline and digital mediation. When accountability shifts so heavily to the student, the absence of that immediate physical structure can be crippling for some.
Absolutely. The removal of the external structures of accountability, the daily check-ins, just the act of getting dressed and commuting, it means that students who haven't yet developed strong metacognitive skills are disproportionately impacted.
Okay, let's define that quickly for you listening.
Yeah.
What are metacognitive skills in this context?
Simply put, it's thinking about your own thinking. It's the ability to monitor and manage your own learning, knowing when you're distracted, knowing which topics you truly haven't mastered yet, and knowing how to budget your time effectively.
Which is not easy.
Not at all. And the sources suggest that for younger students, particularly those straight out of high school or first-generation college students who might lack that external scaffolding at home, well, the demand for high self-regulation often leads to significantly higher attrition rates in introductory online courses. For them, the lack of structure is a direct cause of failure.
And of course, we can't talk about structural harm without discussing the digital divide. We often assume, oh, everyone has a laptop now, so that's solved. But the sources paint a much more nuanced picture.
Yeah, the problem isn't just access to a device, it's access to reliable high-speed bandwidth. If a student in a rural area has to use, spotty satellite internet, the experience of a live video lecture or participating in a timed assessment is fundamentally broken.
The whole thing falls apart.
This disparity in access to necessary infrastructure directly causes unequal educational outcomes. The infrastructure challenge completely negates the promise of equal access. It leads to frustration, lower performance scores.
That's such a powerful point. If the medium itself introduces this unavoidable technical friction, then the student isn't failing because they don't get the material.
They're failing because the connection dropped during the final exam.
Exactly.
And on top of that, we lose a core element of the traditional educational experience, that immediate nonverbal feedback loop and the shared physical environment.
You're talking about things like kinesthetic learning, right?
Yeah.
Students who learn best by doing something.
Precisely. Kinesthetic learners, or students who rely heavily on spontaneous in-person discussions to process complex ideas, the kind of brainstorming that happens when you just spontaneously start drawing on a whiteboard.
Sure.
They often find that the mediated nature of video calls or asynchronous forums really hinders their comprehension. Their engagement just drops significantly because the medium isn't optimized for their natural learning style. And that results in less holistic educational growth.
And then there's the elephant in the room, social isolation. Learning isn't just about absorbing facts, it's about socialization, networking.
The lack of routine, daily, in-person social contact is a major concern. The sources highlight that online environments can successfully replicate formal instruction, but they often struggle to foster organic peer learning and networking.
You mean those chance encounters in the hallway or the spontaneous study groups that form after class?
Exactly those things. The absence of a physical community for so many students, especially those just transitioning into college, it results in increased feelings of isolation and, frankly, reduced opportunities to build the soft skills that are so essential for their careers.
So when that crucial social context is removed, the shift creates this higher psychological burden on the student to intentionally go out and seek connection rather than having it naturally provided by the environment.
It's just another thing they have to manage. Developing robust social and professional networks becomes another self-regulated task, not an incidental benefit of just showing up to class.
So where does this all leave us? We've established that flexibility is a massive help for the self-disciplined learner, but a huge harm factor for the learner struggling with executive function.
Right.
The same technology that offers access to millions also deepens the digital divide for those with poor connectivity.
And that's the key finding from this entire deep dive, the complexity of causality. The outcome isn't defined by the existence of online learning, but by the learner's unique context and attributes interacting with the medium.
So the medium isn't good or bad on its own.
Not at all. Self-paced learning is the perfect illustration. It leads to superior mastery for the disciplined adult learner, but it results in procrastination and crippling anxiety for the high school student who's struggling with time management.
So it sounds like we have to abandon this idea of online learning as some monolithic thing. We have to recognize it's a collection of diverse instructional models, and each one has its own specific targeted consequences.
This raises a really important question about designing educational systems moving forward. I mean, if the complexity of causality is this high, we have to stop asking if online learning is good or bad.
It's the wrong question.
It's the wrong question. Instead, we have to focus on how to build adaptive systems that can effectively mitigate harm factors like the digital divide and isolation, while maximizing the inherent help factors like flexibility and global access. We need to be designing for the why behind the outcomes.
That shift in perspective is so crucial. And bringing this back to you, the listener, what really stands out to you about this shifting landscape? I mean, the evolution of education is undeniably driven by technology, often for reasons of convenience and cost savings.
And therefore, understanding the resulting impact, both the positive expansion of access and the potential negative reinforcement of equity gaps and isolation, is absolutely essential for making informed choices about the future of learning.
Whether you're a student choosing a course or a manager hiring someone.
Exactly. Whether you're choosing a course, designing a curriculum, or hiring an employee, we have to recognize that the digital classroom requires a different kind of student, one who is inherently more autonomous.
The causality is complex, but the impact is profound. We've established that digital education requires a different kind of support structure and, ultimately, different metrics for success.
Precisely. And this is the provocative thought I want to leave with you. Given that education has changed and those external accountability structures have kind of faded, what metric previously ignored in traditional learning must now be prioritized to accurately measure student success as a result of widespread online classes? It's not just about content mastery anymore. Is the new critical measure a student's demonstrated digital literacy?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's their emotional resilience, their proven ability to self-motivate and cope with the inherent isolation of remote work? That is the next evolution we have to watch in the measurement of learning.
A fascinating thought to leave with you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the evolving world of digital learning. We'll catch you next time.